Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So my name's Louise, and as we said, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at UNICEF UK. And I know that that role and that job title can sometimes look like different things for different organisations. So just to say that I oversee our marketing and communications departments, our flagship campaign and event Soccer Aid, and I'm also the lead for our emergency humanitarian response. So today I am delighted to speak about a subject that is really close to my heart, hopefully, which is around mastering inclusive and compelling storytelling to drive impact and purpose. When I first spoke to Jason about joining you guys today, I think I was a bit bold in saying mastering. So I will do my very best to share the experience that we've had at UNICEF and hopefully give you a good 20 minutes. So I'm going to be completely honest and say this is my first ever keynote speech opening a conference. And so I did what every normal person does when they do something new. I Googled it. And I said, what do I do when I write a keynote speech? And the resounding answer was to say, start with an inspiring quote. So, ta-da. And this quote has been around for a while and it really resonates with me. So the stories we tell literally make the world. And if you want to change the world, you need to change your story. And really, that's what my talk for the next 20 minutes is about. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with UNICEF, we are the leading organisation working for children. We are the UN agency working for children to ensure every child survives and thrives in their childhood. And so when I think about that quote and why it really kind of, I guess, stayed with me, sorry the mic, I truly believe that if you want to change the world, you start with children. So the plan for the next 20 minutes, maybe 18 now to keep us on track. I'm going to talk to you a bit about why inclusive storytelling is important and why it's crucial to UNICEF, but also I think really crucial to all of us in the room. I'm going to share our journey, where we've been and where we are now. And I think the most important thing to say, it is a journey and we're definitely not there yet. And through all of this, try and offer some insights as to how we did it and how we did it badly, perhaps at times, that perhaps are some learnings for us all. And then finally, I'm going to wrap up and leave you to what sounds like the most incredibly interesting and inspiring day. So I think the other caveat just to say is that it's really hard to summarise the work in 20 minutes. These are days and days worth of probably summits and workshops to talk you through. There are frameworks behind this work, there is research, there is huge amounts of expertise. So I will do my best in 20 minutes. And then finally to say that also I'm fronting the work. I have an incredible team who has done all of this work. And so again, if you have any questions, give me a shout at the end. But I will do my best to tell you our story. So, firstly, starting with understanding what actually inclusive storytelling is and why it's important. So at UNICEF UK, we believe storytelling is a powerful tool for change. It's not just about raising awareness, it's about fostering understanding, driving empathy, and inspiring action. Inclusive storytelling is the meaningful representation and it's also advocacy. And it involves things like showcasing diverse characters and contexts whilst challenging homogenous stereotypes, actively including the voices of those represented in the creation process of our marketing. It's moving beyond one-dimensional narratives to highlight individuality, agency, and connections through relatability. And finally, it's about genuine, human connection and depictions that build empathy not as the goal, but actually as an outcome of our best practice. I got notes, sorry. So, why it's important, why it's critical. In today's evolving society and evolving world, the importance of inclusivity in storytelling cannot be overstated. The narratives that we create shape our perceptions, they inform our actions, and they influence societal norms. And so whilst there are so many reasons why storytelling is crucial, here are 4 that make me proud to be a marketer, but also recognising the role and the importance of us in the room. The first one is, put simply, the world isn't inclusive. Despite progress, inequality and exclusion persists. Marginalised communities often have their stories untold or misrepresented, and traditional narratives can rely on outdated stereotypes. These perspectives perpetuate harmful biases and systemic inequities. Next, our audiences demand it. So today, socially conscious audiences expect brands to reflect their values and commit to diversity and inclusion. Younger generations in particular support brands that prioritise inclusivity and brands that have social responsibility. It's about building authentic connections and trust. Inclusive storytelling fosters deeper connections with our audiences, and when people see their experiences represented, there you go, accurately and respectfully, they are more likely to engage and form emotional bonds with the brands that we have, and leading to an increased support and loyalty. And then finally, really importantly, it's about living our values. This isn't about tokenism. At UNICEF, our mission is to create a better world for every child, no matter their background. And so inclusivity clearly is central to that objective. So ensuring children's stories are told, they're told fairly and accurately, aligns with our core value. So really, inclusivity is not, inclusive storytelling is not a trend. It's a fundamental shift that reflects the evolving values and expectations of our society. By embracing inclusive storytelling, we create narratives that are responsible to leading the change. By embracing inclusive storytelling, we can create narratives that are not only compelling, authentic, but also transformative. I mean, if we were to take a look at some of the best brands in the world, they're doing it already, and they're doing it brilliantly. If we look at Nike, they're using stories of athletes overcoming challenges to highlight themes of perseverance and achievement. That deeply resonates with their audiences. Dove, through their Real Beauty campaign, are challenging beauty standards and promote body positivity. And I know personally, I very much enjoy that campaign. And finally, Coca-Cola. The Share a Coke campaign had personalised names on their bottles. It fostered emotional connection, it had social sharing, and ultimately it really resonated because it had real people at the heart of their campaign. And what we do know is it drove significant sales. So then, a quick word, if that's about inclusive storytelling, a bit about storytelling more generally for our role as marketers. I'm not telling you anything here you don't already know, and so apologies if I'm telling you to suck eggs, but storytelling enhances human connection through representation and meaningful engagement. It creates memorability. People remember stories, not statistics. So, for example, I came back from Ukraine just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to share with you a couple of stats about what's going on right now for children in Ukraine. So globally, 1 in 5 children are currently either fleeing or living in an active conflict zone. In Ukraine, 30% of the country has remnants of war or bombs or missiles on the ground across the whole country. 6 million children have fled their homes. And on average, over the last 2.5 years of the escalation of violence in Ukraine, children have spent on the front line, have spent over 5.5 months underground in shelters. And then finally, UNICEF has provided humanitarian assistance for 8.7 million people in Ukraine through safe water, through healthcare, and through schooling. So they are compelling stats, I think you would agree, but probably in an hour or so, they're probably not going to be remembered, and that's fair enough. And so if we go back to storytelling, what does storytelling do? So let me share with you what it's like to be a parent right now in Ukraine. If it's not too weird, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. If you don't want to, totally fine. It's only for about 30 seconds or a minute. Now imagine being a mother or a father who's dropped your child off at nursery this morning. In fact, actually, many of you may have done that already, like me. Now, you have to go to work. Some of you, obviously, despite our perceptions of war, might not realise that life just goes on in a war zone. So you head off to work after spending yet another night hearing the terrifying sounds of missiles and bombs. Now, without a shelter in your home, you rely on what we call the 2-wall rule. And that really simply is that you put 2 walls between you and a potential blast zone. So when the air sirens blast, you rush to the centre of your house, perhaps under the stairs, perhaps in your bathroom, to shield your family from deadly blasts. By following that 2-wall rule, you're increasing your chances of your family's survival, and you're making sure that glass from windows doesn't shatter over your babies. You're beyond exhausted, more tired than the usual parent tired, and you set off for work with your heart heavy with worry. You drop your child off at nursery feeling an overwhelming mix of emotions. You're happy because you know that your child's nursery, has a shelter, making it the safest place for them. In fact, it's safer than with you. Yet you're heartbroken because you're not with them, knowing that each time that siren wails, they're going to call out for you, because that's what children do when they're scared. They cry for their parents. But UNICEF built that shelter. They made sure it had ventilation, beds, toys, lighting, so when your little one has to go down there multiple times a day, they don't feel afraid. In fact, it's quiet, it's peaceful, and it's well equipped, and it means their day just carries on as usual. So while your heart aches with worry for your child, you find a small measure of comfort knowing that that your child is in the safest place possible right now. That knowledge provides you with a fleeting moment of relief in what is otherwise an unbearably difficult time. UNICEF is there for them, and UNICEF is there for their child. If your eyes are still closed, you can open them. And I hope that demonstrates the point around the stories that we tell and how they stay with us. It helps us to connect to issues, to people, and to brands. Statistics and facts have a place. I love a good statistic, but stories are what brings those numbers to life. They evoke emotion, create empathy, and they make complex issues relatable. Through storytelling, we can inspire action, foster understanding, build deeper and more meaningful connections. Stories have the power to transcend barriers, make abstract concepts tangible, and they humanize the experiences behind the data. In a world saturated with information, it is the compelling stories that resonate and leave the lasting impact. So, if that's everything about stories, let me share with you UNICEF's journey in inclusive storytelling. So, I'm going to share with you 3 ads for over the last sort of 7 or 8 years. And let me tell you a little bit about UNICEF's brand before I do, to give a little bit of context. So the ads that you will see are brand positioning pieces. And the most important thing to say is UNICEF is one of the biggest brands in the world. But we often joke it is the biggest brand you've never heard of, which is quite the oxymoron. Mothers in the furthest corners in the world know UNICEF, love UNICEF. But in countries where we don't have direct programs, people aren't sure. They're like, are you a UN agency? Or I think you might work in emergencies. But they don't necessarily associate us with children. And that's obviously a profound problem. And so a huge focus of our brand work over the last decade or so is about increasing our association with with children. And that's hypothesis is really about, if people know we work for children, they're more likely to engage with us. So the first ad I'm going to share with you is beautiful. It is visually stunning, if I don't mind saying. I didn't do it, so I can say that. It is visually stunning, it is emotionally compelling, and it is carefully crafted. But actually it misses the point in several ways. So let me show you the ad, and then we'll talk about it.
Little children snuggle under soft black stars. If you look into their eyes, soft black stars. Deliver them from
Danisha!
and the letter and the word. Let them read the silence, bathed in soft black stars. Let them trace the raindrops under soft black stars. You and I will meet one day under the night sky, lit by soft black stars.
So, where did it go wrong? So we've used actors. Instead of featuring real children, we opted for actors. This choice inadvertently created a barrier between our audience and the true stories of the children we aim to help. The use of actors can dilute our authenticity of our message, making it harder for our viewers to connect. Now, I recognise that is a privileged position because not everyone has that, but we do have the ability to feature real children, and therefore we should be maximising that opportunity. And if we go back to that point around inclusive storytelling, telling the real stories through real children is where we should be focusing our time. It's probably worth saying also is that actually very rarely do we use actors. In fact, this was an exception, but we still made that choice, and it probably wasn't the right one. It provoked pity. I talked about empowering children. Now, the narrative leads heavily towards evoking sympathy and pity. And whilst, of course, it can be effective in getting people's attention, it doesn't foster the sense of responsibility or agency that we're looking for. It portrays children as passive victims rather than individuals with potential and strength. It lacks our clear objective. I told you that people don't really know what UNICEF does. I'm not sure you come away going, I'm really clear about what UNICEF does. So it failed to communicate that. And then finally, it's perhaps regressive. And that sounds pretty harsh. But the issues that you see for children there aren't clear. The reality is it doesn't show the whole story. Behind every child is normally a family, a community, someone who is supporting that child. But we're not showing that right now. We're showing them on their own, broadly. And so, we're seeing right now children as vulnerable and weak. Now, we're also therefore homogenizing children. I think it's also fair to say that we really also don't be needing to show two white children representing the needs of children who mostly reside in the global south as well. That really doesn't sit well in our current society. So, despite its aesthetic appeal, it didn't actually advance our brand goals, and so we had to do more work. So I'll show you the next one.
We are UNICEF, and with your donations, we're changing the world, one child at a time. How? By doing more good, in more places, for more children than any other organisation. We have 13,000 people in 190 countries. We hydrate, vaccinate and educate millions of children every year. We built the largest humanitarian warehouse system on Earth. Think Amazon, only way more important. We drive aid convoys through deserts, land cargo planes on dirt tracks. We span time zones and work in war zones. We advise governments, influence corporations, and lobby presidents. And all to give every child what they need most, more than a chance to survive, a chance to be great. Because we don't see children as weak. We see them as strong, strong enough to change the world. UNICEF. Help a child. Change the world.
So what did we do better? This time we focused on insights. We actually responded to what we thought the audience needed to hear. This allowed us to craft the narrative that speaks to what do they want, what do they need to understand about UNICEF. We're featuring real children, so we've moved away from the actors and featuring children and their stories. This shift helped us bring authenticity. We focused on positive emotions. So instead of focusing on pity, we highlighted stories of resilience, hope and potential. That hopefully what you take away from here is recognizing that children are not mere recipients of aid, but they have agency, they have potential, and they have the potential to thrive with the right circumstances and the right opportunities that they deserve. And then finally, the advert clearly conveys UNICEF's mission and impact, helping audiences to understand what we do and why it matters. So that was progress. And don't get me wrong, the first piece was beautiful and it resonates and it feels emotional, but this was progress, especially in the spirit of our inclusive storytelling. So what's next? Well, really, it's probably making it a little bit less about UNICEF and a bit more about children. So let me share this one.
It's, are we there yet? It's always asking why, never sitting still. Bath times. Home times, and best friends forever. Wherever it is, it's childhood, and UNICEF is here to protect it. UNICEF. The C stands for children.
So again, not perfect, still work to do, of course, and this was a very short piece, and so it's not telling necessarily the full role of UNICEF, but hopefully you can see the progression we're trying to make. So how did we do better this time? Children as active participants. We portray children as those who are part of their own story. We're highlighting their agency and their potential. This is a narrative shift from victimhood to empowerment, and it is critical in what we do. It's about a global perspective. The advert emphasises that children, no matter where they are in the world, share common needs and aspirations. There's a universal approach here that bridges the cultural and geographic divide. I mean, I don't know about you, but are we there yet with my kids all the time? And actually that last moment before bed when you're trying to kind of shut the door and they're like, can I have a snack, please? Children do that wherever they are in the world. And actually it's just recognizing that and building that connection. And then finally, engaging visuals and storytelling. You feel upbeat, you feel like positive about what UNICEF is doing in the world and actually what the role of children have in our future, because if you want to change the world, you start with children. So they're just 3 examples. It's fair to say UNICEF is a huge organisation that does a huge amount of marketing communication. So this is just a tiny snapshot, but hopefully shows you the journey that we've been on. I think the final thing to say is that we're living our values. UNICEF has said it is a better world for every child, and we're doing that through our marketing and communications as well. So what has the impact of this journey been? So again, still recognising we're not there yet. We've increased our association with children. That was the objective, and that has happened. Our audiences more now know that we are more strongly associated with children in UNICEF, and they understand our work better. There is a clearer connection that helps them to solidify our brand identity. We have enhanced brand consideration. People are more likely to consider supporting UNICEF because they see direct and positive impact of our work. This shift in perception has been crucial to building trust and credibility. And then finally, most importantly probably, is that these changes have resulted in an increase in financial support. More people are willing to give their money or their time or their voice to support the work that UNICEF does. So there's a nuance behind all of this. No 3 ads can make that massive change on their own. Of course they can't, but hopefully at least shares with you the journey that we've been on. So, as I conclude, reflecting on the journey that we've been on, it's not been easy. It's far from over. The changing the narrative requires continuous effort, reflection and adaptation. We've engaged our whole organisation in this work, and we've recognised that inclusive storytelling is not just a marketing strategy, but it is a fundamental shift in how we operate and communicate in the same way we recognise the role we have in society. We started with a clear problem statement, we set out our vision, and we took incremental steps to implement the changes. We've tested our ads with audiences. We've made multiple ads and tested those with different audiences and canned some of them. We've collaborated with diverse communities and experts, and we've continuously challenged ourselves to do better. We've had to confront uncomfortable truths that somehow our previous methods were harmful and needed to change. So we collect stories differently. We write stories differently, and we tell stories differently. We're always striving to be more authentic, human, and have impactful narratives. Because as I said, this isn't just about brand, marketing, or communications. This is about the impact that we can all have on the world. And so, if I was to conclude and to go back to the opening quote is, the stories we tell literally make the world. And if we want to change the world, we need to change our story. UNICEF has started to change its story. And if you haven't already done so, is there a chance you might want to change yours? Thank you for your time today.